She's funny, she's smart, she craves chocolate every day, and she is the Greek goddess of comedy. Here is your host, Ellen Karis.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Karis' Comedy Corner. My name is Ellen Karis, and yes, we are still Zooming because we are still in whatever this thing is. We're in it, we're Zooming, but we still get great guests because everybody else is Zooming. I've been saying that when this is all over with, we are all going to wind up talking on delay. But anyway, we'll get through it. Very excited about our guest. But before we start, I wanted to, of course, thank our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Baywalk Marketing. Go to their website, baywalk.net, for all of your advertising and marketing needs. They can help you with your website. They can help you with your social media. They can help make a great flyer for you for your business. They are also experts in the Greek community. Go to their website, hollywoodgreeks.com, for all of your Greek entertainment. Yes, that will happen. And HellenicFestivals.org. Find out where there is a Greek festival near you. Baywalk.net is the website. Baywalk Marketing is the company, and we thank them for their support. Our other sponsor is Select Flex, which is an orthotic. It's also called an insert. You put it in your shoe. Let me tell you something. These are the best over-the-counter orthotics you will ever get because there is an adjustability in the arch, and you can make the arch firm, or extra firm, depending on what your needs are. I do not work out with these without them in my sneakers. I walk around all New York City. I don't take mass transit anymore, so everything is walking. I have them in every pair of shoes that I own. They are phenomenal. Go to their website, selectflex.com, selectflex.com. There's a 30-second video, and it shows you how they work. It's amazing. And for Karis Comedy Corner listeners, there is a 25% discount if you type in the code FAMILY25, FAMILY 25. Selectflex.com. I always say they are the best invention since suitcase on wheels. All right. I am very excited because of a lot of reasons. One, I love meeting, finding, and we're going to tell you how this came about, dynamic women. And she's also a native New Yorker like myself. We're a bit of a rare breed, not as common as you think, because people say they're from New York and then you find out that they really were born in Des Moines and they've just lived here for the last 20 years. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying we were here, when things were bad, and then they got better and now they're weird. So I was so impressed because this woman wrote a phenomenal book called The Long Pause and the Short Breath, which basically chronicled her time during COVID from the time of the lockdown till about mid-June. We'll find out exactly when, but it was what she went through, the protests and what happened with the George Floyd situation and how New Yorkers reacted to it. And it is a book of stories in prose and beautiful photographs that really, because I was here, really captured this detail that even after you read the story, there was more to the story in the photograph. And she really poured her heart into it. I really felt like I knew exactly how she was feeling on these particular days that she wrote about. And it was not only personal, but she wrote from other people's perspective. It's just fantastic. I can't talk enough about it, but I found it on a website called the Upper East Side Patch, which is basically like our little local newspaper, except nobody gets real newspapers anymore. And I was so intrigued also because I'm in the midst of doing a documentary on New York City and it's changing and how COVID has affected people and in different neighborhoods. So I reached out, so friendly, so nice, and has an amazing career as an interior designer, which I am in awe of because I'm embarrassed of my background right now. God forbid she ever comes here. She'll just take a sledgehammer and a big hefty bag, throw everything out because we're a little hoardy around here. big time. And anyway, without further ado, please welcome my guest, the amazing, talented Nicole Freezer Rubens. I used to have applause.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you. Thanks for doing
laugh track here. Insert. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad you found me. And yeah, I'm delighted. This is my very first podcast ever. So there's that.
I find that hard to believe that you. First of all, you are beautiful. You should be on TV. I mean, podcast. Like we're just starting to do the Zooming now with YouTube. I mean, some people do tape their podcast, but I mean, I'm happy if somebody's going to listen to it while they're brushing their teeth, you know? So I just kind of keep it video, I keep it audio. But now when I have somebody like you, this is, you know, we
oh boy,
we class up the joint. I'm so impressed with you, your book, but it was getting to know you through your book that was so impressive. So just tell me a little bit about yourself. Where exactly in New York did you grow up?
So I grew up, I've been mostly on the Upper East Side for my entire life. I was born at Mount Sinai Hospital, which is in the book. It was a major COVID station.
Yeah.
And I grew up on the Upper East Side for the most part. I went on to Boston for college for a few years and ran right back to New York City as fast as I could.
Right.
So right now I'm living directly across from Lenox Hill Hospital, where I was during lockdown, which was an experience in and of itself to be so enmeshed in visually and emotionally, and you know, with the hospital and the sirens and the applause at 7 p.m. And you know, I think it was a slightly different take on COVID in New York City, being on top of a hospital. But that said, I don't usually focus on the hospital, and I do love our neighborhood. And
right, I do.
I think we live near each other.
Yes,
maybe
we do. Yep. Yes, we do. We're Upper East Siders.
Yeah.
I'm not that far.
I know nobody wants to. No young people want to here anymore, but you know, it's still a great neighborhood.
All right. I like to think I'm young once in a while. You know what I mean? Not at this moment as I'm looking at my by the way, Zoom adds 10 years to your face. I just want everybody to know that. Okay.
Oh, definitely.
Oh my God.
You're a Greek goddess.
I am. Oh yeah. Sun goddess. That's why you can always see me from the. We're not going down. We don't do any more full body shots anymore. That's COVID killed that. That's for sure.
Are you wearing pants?
I do
I'm wearing pants.
I do. I do wear the pants. I feel like men do that more. I think that's a man thing a little bit. I do. Yeah, I do wear. I mean, they all have elastic on them, but I do wear pants. But I just want to get to your career. God, you have no idea how bloated I feel. I want to get to your career, and like, after you notice, I told you everything's just conversational here. And you went to. This is how, by the way, women on the Upper East Side speak. By the way, just thoughts.
Most definitely.
Right. Because we're all caffeinated up. And we used to just come from workout or Soul Cycle. We'll get to that. We'll get to that part of it in a few minutes. But after you left Boston College, I'm assuming you studied art history.
No, I didn't go to Boston College. I went to school in Boston.
Oh, okay.
I studied. I went to Brandeis University in tiny little Waltham, Massachusetts, and very liberal arts environment. And I was lucky enough to be able to. I officially majored in studio art. I minored in art history, and I also minored in creative writing and poetry. And I was fortunate enough to be able to somehow or another maneuver. I took equal numbers of courses in each of the three subjects, and I did my thesis in poetry while I was there. So it was great for me. It was sort of set the path for my creative career for the rest of my life, where I always need some kind of a creative outlet. So if it's not, I've been writing poetry since I was 9. I was always drawing when I was little. And when I graduated, I did some graduate work at NYU in creative writing as well. And then I went my career was in selling art. I worked in an art gallery for almost 10 years. And then when I had my first daughter and I went back to work briefly after that, I didn't want to be working for somebody else at that point, and shifted my creative outlet to interior design and started that. I would start off with art consulting. And then once I moved into my apartment 21 years ago, I realized that I really had the bug for interior design, and just started a business. I went to the D&D building, which is the decorator and design building in New York City with all the showrooms. And I started at the top and I walked in and out of each showroom, figured out what I liked and how to set it up, and just sort of taught myself how to do that.
I mean, that is
my stepfather was an architect.
Okay. So you got.
I was around
someplace. Usually, there's someone either you worked for or there was some influence to sort of get you on the path.
I grew up around it. Like I used to take my parents' Architectural Digest issues, into bed with me and pour through them. But I spent, I guess, about 10 years working in an art gallery. And then I've spent the last 21 years with my own boutique interior design firm, which, it's just me all the time, nobody else, except for the clients who are wonderful. And I've really enjoyed being able to have that as a creative outlet while I can be a mother to my 3 children now, and have the flexibility to meet a friend for lunch and do some work and pick up a kid at school, or start taking photos on my iPhone once I got an iPhone. 10, 11, 12, 13 years ago, I got an iPhone.
But you really controlled your own destiny. I mean, and to be able to start a business from scratch is very difficult. And in New York City, especially when you're talking about construction and permits and licenses and lots of approvals, I can't imagine what you had to teach yourself, and 2, what you had to go through to even get things done. I mean, I'm sure once you got going, but it's not that easy.
It was, and I started small. I wasn't doing grand renovation projects in townhouses back, 20 years ago, but I worked my way up. I built my clientele up. And, it's nice. I enjoy work when there are no problems, as long as a sofa fits on an elevator, I'm fine. And I get a lot out of it, but simultaneously, I was always writing. And I took a few amateur photography classes, like in the summers in college, a couple of the summers. And so I always liked taking pictures, and so I was able to juggle, they were sort of hobbies, and I was able to juggle everything. But once I got not to be obsessed with my iPhone, but once I got my iPhone, which 2 of my best friends gave me as a 40th birthday present. And I knew that once I had a smartphone, I would be the one who was constantly on my phone, checking my phone. I'm waiting to get hit by a car while I'm crossing the street because I can't get it out of my hand, but it enabled me to do so much more on the go. Right. I mean, the camera alone and the edits on Instagram are my passion. And then I can be out exploring and still be answering clients and taking pictures. And I don't know if this is the time to talk about it, but when I started writing the book, I wrote a lot of it while I was walking, and wrote it on my iPhone. So that's just, I do a lot of creative things on the move. It's strange. I don't know if it's impressive. It's weird.
Actually, what it is it's number one, it's efficient. And let me just say, as a comedian, I've got thoughts in my head all the time. And then I'll say a bit and I'm like, oh, that's good. Let me write it down, because I'm still old school and I think I still need a pen and a paper. I have an iPhone as well. I'm not great at all the notes and stuff. I do take pictures. I do use social media, but I don't know. Anyway, you're more efficient. Then later on, I'm like, what was that when I was passing CVS? What was I thinking? And it was, it's out of my head. So much more efficient. Obviously, Steve Jobs, changed your life in a good.
I am forever grateful to Apple, right? For better or for worse. Yeah, I mean, right. Really, for me, if I think about it, it's really that technology had me to get a lot done.
Good. So did you do mostly residential when you say interior design? Did you work on anything commercial?
Yes. So I do. I enjoy the residential the most, and I've done mostly residential, mostly in New York City, second homes in the Hamptons, or sometimes in Vail for existing clients, and then I've done 3 veterinary practices. So I've done that commercially, which is fun, because it's a whole different challenge when nothing, everything needs to be animal proof. But so I've done 3 veterinary practices and a few offices, but I really, the heart and soul of the business is residential and mostly apartments. I'm a city girl. I get the apartment living thing.
So I have to tell you,
and I don't have a dog, but I think I get that.
Right. I love a dog, but anyway, my husband and I have conflict.
So would my children.
Right. I have conflict over who's going to do the dishes. So the dog is not going to work for us. But anyway, and we have no children. So, but I'm one of those people that when I walk down the block, and I like to be engaged. Well, for a bunch of reasons. So I grew up all the way uptown. So I'm a Washington Heights girl, like before Washington Heights was what it is today. So I have always I have to be aware because somebody might grab my pocket, and I still call it a pocketbook. Would call my. I'm older than you are. My pocketbook, you know what I mean? Because that's what was draining my. So I'm not. I don't have the music in my ears, whatever. And I actually don't really even like talking on the phone while I'm walking. But sometimes I have to. You have to do what you have to do. So with that said, since I don't really listen to music while I'm walking, I like to look at my surroundings, and I, in particular, like to look in people's apartments. As I walk, especially in a townhouse, when everything is open and especially I'm getting really detailed, especially Christmas time, what does their tree look like? How did they decorate?
Oh yeah.
Do they have a lot of tchotchkes? Do they keep it just simple? And I also love New York architecture. I couldn't tell you what era, what it's called, Beaux Arts. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I don't know. All I know is that I've been around this my entire life, and I'm still in awe of it. I lived many years on the West Side, and which is a whole different vibe and feel and architecture. And I go over there like I'm a tourist. Because it's still blocks that I've walked down a million times. I'm still sort of in awe of the brownstone and the railing. And it's, again, if you came to my house, you'd be like, oh my God, you might as well just live in a tent. So I don't live the way that I express myself. But there's something just very fascinating about the way everything is laid out. And let me ask you this question. I'm all for fixing things up and making things look nice and all this stuff. But probably 12, 15 years ago, I started to really notice how, of course, things that are old and in disrepair need to be knocked down. I mean, I get that. But I felt like the landscape of the city, Manhattan, when we say the city, Manhattan in particular, was really changing. And they were putting these huge high-rise buildings up, replacing it. Let's just say, I'm just throwing out numbers. Let's say there were 30 apartments, and now there's going to be 1,000 apartments, which aside from it having more people, it started to lose its character. The same thing with retail. When some of the, and we're going to talk about this again in a few minutes when we talk about your book, but when a lot of these mom and pops, as we call them, were either moving or they were losing their lease or they were going out of business, when all of these Starbucks and banks and CVS's and everybody started to take over. I mean, like after a while, I was like, okay, how many king size Hershey bars do we need? How many pharmacies do we really need? And it just sort of took away, and I'm not trying to insult anybody, but it was like looking like, like, I don't know, like a town in Ohio. I mean, everything was starting to look like
a mall. Looks like a mall.
Like a strip mall. So it was very worrisome. And being that I'm Greek, I have an affinity to the Greek coffee shops. So and those started to disappear, that really was upsetting me. With a Starbucks.
Oh, that's painful.
It was very painful. We really got right to my core. But just everything. So what I love about the East Side is, as much as we can, we've sort of hung on to that neighborhood feel. When I tell people, it's like, you don't understand, when I go down the block, I usually run into somebody. I go to church about 5 blocks away, whether it was church, whether it was where I worked out. I used to work out at Equinox, then I went to AKT, whatever it is, or someone from comedy. Like you run, it's not like what you think it is. So we're very much like a neighborhood here.
It's a small town. It's a small town. Yeah, totally.
So I'm sorry. So how did you feel? The question to you is, did you feel the same way that I did when you saw these high rises, like on 57th Street, and and by the way, who's living in them?
They're so tall. That should be illegal. They stick out like sore thumbs, literally middle fingers. It's too much. And they even cast on Central Park. I'm in 100% agreement with you. First of all, I think that the architecture of New York City is stunning, and walk around different neighborhoods and it feels like you're in another country, in another time. I think Washington Heights has beautiful architecture. And I do have to say, overall, I think the architecture on Central Park West is much finer than the architecture on Fifth Avenue. So I agree. The Upper West Side is great to look up and see the buildings, and look down and see the banisters and the stoops. And though I am Jewish, I love a good Greek coffee shop. I go into them, I live for them, and they are dying. They are just dropping like flies, and it's heartbreaking. And the food is always good, and it's available 24/7, and everybody there knows your name. It's a shame. So I loved the mom and pop shops. As I get older, fascinate me more and more. I want to sort of hang on to this nostalgic feeling that I had growing up here, mostly in this neighborhood, for my life. And I photograph a lot of storefronts that are mom and pop looking. I photograph architecture too. It's all on my Instagram account. It's not all in the book. But it's painful to see. Thank goodness we have historic districts that are zoned for, preservation. But it's a shame, because a friend of mine once said to me, and I live on Lexington Avenue, and to me, Lexington, it's much different than it was years and years ago. And I don't see it objectively. I saw it when I was 10. And a friend of mine who lives downtown said, I love walking around your neighborhood. Lexington Avenue is like a small European town, boutiques. And so I try to see that, and I know it's there. And like you said, also the small town feeling of the neighborhood, and that the woman who now stands at the door at Citarella and monitors how many people come in at a time knows my face, and the dry clean and all the local shops. And the maitre d' at my favorite sushi restaurant, Amber Ping, it's the only restaurant they know me at. I was so happy when they reopened after being closed down for a while. So you got to hang on to what's here, because it's really good stuff.
Well, it's funny.
It inspires me. I have to say.
I just went to Amber a couple of weeks ago, and we sat
love Amber
for the first time. Yeah, it was great. But yeah, it's very true. It's and everything is within reach. I love where I live, because I always say within a 10 block radius, I can do everything. Like doctors, stores, work, like I can do everything I can in a 10 block radius.
Absolutely. It's efficient. It's very efficient.
And then of course that they
no call.
Yeah, the Q train. And sometimes we're on overload though.
Because the Q train. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we're on overload because we always want to do too much. But anyway, I want to kind of get to pre-COVID, right before it was in the ether, before it was in every sentence that we say now. Your business, I'm assuming, was doing really well. Real estate was booming here. I mean, it was like the prices were like a little cuckoo crazy. And so you had to be incredibly busy and in demand. And then this thing started happening, and we started to hear about it, from abroad. And then it was in Seattle, and boom, it came here. And all of a sudden, and I think you would agree with me. I mean, it happened pretty fast that we went from this, there's somebody in New Rochelle that has it. And now all of a sudden the emergency rooms are overflowing and there's not enough staff. It was pretty quick, but what did you start to see from a business perspective?
So, I had 2 projects in the works last, beginning of 2020, what was it, 2020. And they got shut down when all the buildings, stopped allowing stuff. Right, exactly. And I mean, one project was in Nantucket. So that I will never see installed. It wound up being, there was a halt on everything. I was supposed to be there for an installation in May. That got delayed, and then ultimately I did it virtually. I mean, I did a FaceTime installation, and I have no idea if this lovely family sofa is in space or not. The other project that I was working on was they were doing some renovations, bathrooms, and other work, and while their children were off at school. And that project got shut down. They doubled the population of their apartment when their children came home, and they didn't have bathrooms, so it was, I felt really for that. But my business came to a screeching halt, which in some ways I appreciated, because I was so, like everybody else, so taken by surprise. So I was stunned, I was like a deer in headlights with what was going on. And, you hear lockdown and you think it's going to be 2 weeks. And then you start to realize that, you can't get your stupid toilet paper, and you can't get the chocolate you like. And, obviously that the hospitals are in crisis, and that this is going to be way more than 2 weeks. And I'm grateful that I did have work to do, because I couldn't have focused on anything other than sort of gearing up for this new situation. I had my 3 kids. 2 of them were in college. 1 was abroad for junior year. Both came home. And my older daughter was already living at home because she had graduated. And suddenly we were back together, a unit of 5. It had been since 2015 where I had a full house. And that was all great in theory. And, it's in practice, it was messy and it was loud, and people had schoolwork and people had jobs to do. And I was just cleaning and walking as much as I could. And it became, it was all consuming. I tend a little obsessed, and my kids would tell you I was obsessed with COVID, but I mean, I guess I wouldn't have been able to write the book if I wasn't coming from the place that it put me into. So for that, I'm grateful, ?
So now you're in it, but where did the idea to do a book come from? Like, what was that moment?
So I didn't plan to write a book. I basically,
I'm sorry,
you never allowed to go out, allowed to exercise.
Written a book.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you've never written. We have a little bit of a delay. You've never written a book.
No, this is my debut book.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have never written a book. I have written poetry, and I've been trained professionally for forever, and I've written for myself on and off throughout the years, and I've taken photography, much less formally trained, and really best on an iPhone and afraid of a real camera. But every day that I could, and which was most days, I would go out and walk in the park, which is what I did before COVID. I gave up on the gym a few years ago for the most part, and get most of my exercise walking in the park, often with a friend, sometimes alone. But here I was alone, because we weren't meeting friends to walk. There was no 6 feet apart. There were no masks, and it's late March, and the weather was decent. And I set out and I walked, and I would listen to my music in my headphones. And I started to write on March 25th. So lockdown was about a week old, And I wrote, and like the first poem in the book and the second poem in the book, I wrote a couple days later. The poems in the book are titled by date. So when I wrote them was actually when what was going on that day. And and then I'd come home and I would, sit down at the computer and type up and edit that day's poem. And every day that I did that, I felt like I had accomplished something, even if it didn't take much time and it wasn't particularly good. By the third poem that I wrote, which was about the field hospital that was being erected outside of Mount Sinai in Central Park, I felt like, okay, this is actually a good poem. When you do an act and when it's really good and you feel good about it, and when you just perform, I assume. So I felt like, okay, there was a good poem. I kept going, and ways into it, I realized that I had a body of work and that it was documenting what was going on in this very small slice of life in my city, for me in my fortunate position. And I then realized that, and all the while I was still taking pictures on my phone wherever I went. So I realized, I have the photos that are covering the same topic as the poems, and I'll put this together and I'll self-publish it, and that'll be that. And then I kept writing for all of spring, basically from March 25th to June 18th. And I didn't put the photos together with the work until I knew it was going to be published. And so March 25th, when Floyd was murdered, there was some, the focus shifted finally, not for better, but there was new angst and new heartbreak, and humanity changed. And I kept writing about that. And every time I saw a march go by my window, I ran out and joined it. Took a lot of pictures and I wrote a little bit about it. And finally, when I stopped, it was June 14th, so summer was coming. And I really felt like I needed to, it was phase 2 of lockdown was starting right around then, and I was going to do a little bit more. And I just decided I had to get out of my own head and get out of my own way and change my mindset and focus on having a summer, or the summer was going to look like, and not be so obsessed with the negativity and how it kept me down. And so I ended the book because I needed to end the book. And then I was fortunate enough to find a publisher, the Three Tomatoes Publishing, which is, so Cheryl Benton has a website for women over 40. It supports, everything that you support. And she started a publishing arm of her business about a year ago and publishes, books by women over 40. And somebody, I was lucky enough to know somebody who knew her, and she said, yes, I'd love to publish this. So then I sort of, then I had to sit down with the photos and match them up with the poems. And it was simple. It just made sense. Even though they were completely created separately, they gelled because I focused on one thing. And once again, 2 different expressive mediums, but ultimately it's all one mind. So, and also, just so you should know, so the bulk of the book, through May 25th is all about COVID and living through COVID. And so the initial title I had in my head was The Long Pause, because Governor Cuomo had deemed it a pause, so that we were not all afraid, but it was a lockdown. It was, a lot of other things. And then when I started accumulating a few poems about racial injustice and racial equality, I dawned on me that I could say, the long pause and the short breath. So hence the title.
It is so impressive. It's such a beautiful book. And I'm gonna say that Christmas is coming a lot sooner than we realize, like I don't know, 6 weeks, and Hanukkah. And I think this would be a beautiful gift. The photography, I mean, I can't believe this was your iPhone. It was so detailed. And again, there was the story, the poem, and the photo, but in the photo, there was more to the story as well. There was so much I loved every photo. The one that really, really spoke to me was the what you put over the matzah, the stained your grandparents. I'm sorry. The matzah cover.
Yeah, it's a matzah cover.
Matzah cover. Okay.
Wow. Which is it's so funny that was your favorite photo, because I posted all the photos on Instagram along the way because I wasn't saving them for a book while they were happening. And that was Passover. We had a Zoom Seder with our family, and we didn't post that photo on Instagram. But when I was accumulating the photos to go in the book, I pulled it up. So that's really funny, because that's the only one in the book that I didn't post.
So there was a few things. Well, one, I read that you said you had a Zoom Seder. We had a Zoom Greek Easter, and my family didn't disappoint. We even argued on Zoom, which is great, because I just, make sure that nothing has changed, that no pandemic will make us any less angrier at each other. Anyway, and also, as I get older, I like old things, because I'm an old thing now. And but I do love, because my grandparents, I knew, I didn't know my father's father, but I knew my father's mother. I knew obviously both my mother's parents, and I actually knew my great grandmother, who was around.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I was really lucky. Like she saw me graduate college. Like I was really lucky. And so,
oh my goodness, wow.
So aside from, the history that I've accumulated through them, as a matter of fact, I really need to take a literal page out of your book, because when the lockdown, or when we felt like we were going to be in, and my gigs started getting canceled, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be running around all over the place. I had started to write a play, a one-woman show about my great-grandmother, which I started like 4 or 5 years ago. So I thought I would really, really be able to, make some headway. I mean, I did some writing, but then I put it down, and, again, everybody's baking bread, they're building decks, they're learning how to play guitar, and it's been 7 months and I haven't even dusted my bedroom yet. Okay. So anyway, so to get to your matzah cover though, I love things like that. I love things that were our grandparents. And I thought a lot about my grandparents, because they lived through so much. And my grandparents all came, Ellis Island. My great grandmother, again, the one that I want to do the play about, came from Cyprus, 7 kids on a ship. And they came to New York. They lived, I think you wrote something about, they lived in, the 1-bedroom apartment with the 7 kids.
My friend's grandmother, right.
Your friend's grandmother. Yes. Yeah. I knew it. I read it somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I love things like that. And if we can get, and also we're at an age where the grandparents that we have really lived in a very, very different era. And, because now people's grandparents, like if they're in their 30s, or their late 20s, their grandparents had either a cell phone and cable. Like I remember my grandmother telling me, TV, to get a TV was a big thing, So
yeah. My grandparents' color TV was a big deal.
Yeah. Right. And the big, it was a piece of furniture. It was.
Oh yeah. It was a piece of. Right. A piece of furniture, exactly.
Right. It was an armoire. It was an armoire, is what it was, right? With a record player in it. Boy, if I keep going, then
we had that.
I'm going to say my age, and then I'll never get a job. But anyway, so I'm waiting for the ageism protest, by the way, because that's the one I'm starting. I expect all the women to.
It's coming. It's coming.
Okay, where's that one? I was like, okay, we got the message about this one. What about this one? Okay, no one talks about this. So when I see that, when I saw yours, and it triggered in me the things that I was thinking about, because I did think a lot about them, and I thought about one of the things that kept me going was like, I mean, they were strong people and they went through a lot. Okay, and I'm not trying to discount this. I'm also not trying to brush off the people that actually lost people because of this, especially if they were younger. Not that if they were older, it helped, but I mean, if they were healthy and it just hit them. I mean, we had a man pass from our church. who, you know, was not elderly.
I mean, awful.
Yeah, just
avoidable.
Right. Exact. Things were happening. But they did live through a lot of sickness, a lot of illness. And it's nice when you have some of those momentums, especially on a holiday, because listen, with them too, you know, family was everything, and that's what kept them together. And even when they came here, you know, I was Greek. They moved to a Greek neighborhood so they can be around people. Not that everybody learned English.
Right.
It's not that they didn't, but that, you know, they can have that sense of familiarity. You're Jewish. A lot of the Jewish people moved, whether they were from Poland or whatnot, to
very
the
similar,
lower
very
east
similar.
side,
Yes.
the Upper East Side. We have Germantown up here in Yorkville.
Yep.
And again, what I love about
Yep.
the New York in general is we still have, although they feel like they're shadows, but we still have that mark of those ethnicities, you know, that those neighborhoods still have. And I love that. I love that so much. So when I saw the matzah cover, there were so many feelings that I got from that. So that's what I'm saying, you know, in the book. That's why I implore everybody to go and get it, because it was just it was beautiful. It was sad. It was happy. You found humor. You were very real about it, and the pictures were really great. And I mean, I think it's just a really nice, you know, momentum, and again, nice gift, especially. Yes, if you lived in New York, but especially if you didn't, because it really got to show you. For us, this was particularly hard for us because we live so close to each other. Even if you live in a big townhouse, once you step outside, everybody's on top of each other. So,
right,
you know, the subway, the stores,
right,
everything. I mean, even so, you know, so exercise, Soul Cycle. I mean, now you think about Soul Cycle and you're freaking out. Then it was like they couldn't put enough.
Oh my God! Right, it's a petri dish.
Right, they couldn't put enough bikes in one room. You know what I mean? Like if you weren't getting sweat from the person on your right and the person on your left, then it wasn't a good class. Forget about your own sweat. So it was just, you know, so I think that for us in particular, it was harder because we live so close, as opposed to even if you lived in, you know, in White Plains, you know, and you had a house or a condo, you can go out in your porch. I mean, it's just,
you have a yard, right?
It was very different for even LA. Very different. It's very spread out. It was very different. You know, we have Central Park. There was a lot of people in Central Park. You know, we were looking. That was our backyard. That was it. That's all we had. So when you're
I am forever, in addition to Steve Jobs, to Central Park.
Yeah, me too. Well, it's always been very beautiful. And then I always appreciated it, but it's just like it was another level of appreciation to sort of to have that. But I'm so happy that you put this together and that you said, you know, your stories, and you had some personal ones about your friend's grandparents and another friend's father that passed, and you really gave us a very good feel of you know what we were going through, because you know sometimes you know it passes and then you forget, but meanwhile now as we speak, and God, I just want to be wrong. I want to be wrong, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure exactly where we're headed because now the numbers are going up, but maybe because it's not a surprise and they know what this is a little more than before. You know, hopefully it won't get that way. But when you hear the news, you sort of all of a sudden you go back to, oh my gosh, to kind of go back to that, you know, I can't go over to my sister's. I mean, and I can't go over and do this. And it's really scary times. And you live across the street from Lenox Hill Hospital. So what was that like?
So that was a major piece of what I think my memory of being locked down here will contain, because first of all, you know, the streets were empty. There's no traffic anywhere. There were extra sirens, extra ambulances. There were ambulances parked on Lexington. They're never parked on Lexington regularly. The most, what's the word I'm looking for? The most active part of it that was the clap because we care at 7 p.m. every day. So that started on March 27th, I think, was the first clap because we care. And I'd seen it on TV in Europe when they would applaud every night at 7. And I heard, through the grapevine that we were going to start doing this ritual, and everybody was going to open their windows and everybody was going to clap, and pots and pans. And so it started small. We don't have a terrace, but we have this teeny tiny little balcony where you could smoke a cigarette, maybe if you smoked, but you can't really stay out there. Mm-hmm. And we never use it, of course, but it became valuable real estate during COVID. And the first night we went out there, and there were a few people came out of the hospital. 7 o'clock is their shift change. I think that's why they picked in. And there were a few people in scrubs who appeared, and you could hear the clapping. You could see people out the window. And then every day it gained momentum. And every day at 7, like clockwork, we were out there. And it was a release for us, as well as a thank you to essential workers and all of the hospital workers. And it became a bigger and bigger thing. And so the people who came out every night knew to look up. They knew where the people were going to be standing in their windows and on their balconies, and who had the signs, and it became its own little community. And it was beautiful, it was moving, it was heartbreaking, but it was important for them and important for us too, just to be able, you couldn't do anything, you were helpless. And if I could stand on my tiny balcony, squished between my family members, and blow that, whistle that I learned how to do at sleepaway camp, and someone could hear it and feel good, it was worth it. It was moving. So yeah, living across the hospital was scary. There were the trucks that were there, and you knew exactly what they were. There was a first truck, there was a second truck. I tried to not walk on that block, which is my block. So it was daunting, but I'm just really grateful for everything that all of the essential workers, from the UPS people to the Amazon delivery people, to the hospital workers, and to the mental health care people. I mean, it's a giant village, and we did it. New York City did it. And I'm hoping that, there was some hope that came through and even if we do get stifled again soon, we know that we will come out the other side, as we have, hopefully. So
I live near Cornell, so a few blocks down. So but again, we're not that far from each other. So I would sometimes they come from the 6 train and sort of pass my block, and you see these people. And if you know anybody personally that works in a hospital, and I've known a few people, it's funny when you talk to them, they're so, it was okay. We got through it. I mean, it was bad. It was bad at first, but we got through it. Like, there's something in their personality that I know I don't have, that they just, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they were at risk. And when I say hospital workers too, I want everybody to understand it's from the special respiratory surgeon to the person that is mopping the floors. Like, every person was
absolutely
so important. And it wasn't about education or money or anything. They were all going there. So I do think as New Yorkers, we definitely found a new respect for the postal workers and all these other people. They're not just I don't even know what I'm trying to not use a good word. I'm trying to use the right word.
No, I feel that way too.
They're not our servant.
They're essential. They're really essential.
Right. I mean, they're working. They have a job, and it's important, and they're doing it. I mean, they are doing it.
Yeah.
So, and even the people at Whole Foods, again, in the beginning, when it was so unknown, because remember, it was airborne, it was don't touch this,
right
they still went, they didn't know, they went into the grocery store
show up for minimum wage, they showed up,
exactly. So I think I think, you know,
God
again,
bless them. Yeah.
God bless them. And if there was
Yeah.
kind of any good that came out of it,
Yeah.
let's, you know, because I think that that's also part about respect and humanity and dignity. So to kind of get back to sort of maybe the last third of your book, when you talked about the protest and what happened with George Floyd, and obviously that affected you, affected everybody. Listen, you know, it's like we're fatigued already. It's like enough already. Like, let's be human beings. Let's and that doesn't mean letting people out on the loose. You know, it's just like it's just wasn't right. I want to get the right words for it. You know, it just wasn't right. It was if that's not the way you handle things at all, not in this country, and not should be in any country, but I'm saying that we know better than that. And it was horrible. But
yes.
And I get it. And it's very interesting because, you know, you've lived in New York City. I've lived in New York City. I mean, you're Jewish. I'm ethnic. I'm Greek. I mean, what was interesting.
Same difference, right? Same difference.
My husband's Jewish. I mean, just to give you another of, you know, right? Like, it's like, it's so,
there you go.
so
right.
similar. It's scary. But what I was going to say was, you know, what was interesting though, because here we live in diversity. So I was a little perplexed by the violent part. Like, I understand the protest part, but it was like, but we live, you know what I mean? We live next to each other. We work with each other. It was a little disconcerting, especially the looting. I'm sorry, but I feel like even if you're angry about something that's justifiably angry, you have no right to destroy somebody else's property in the name of that thing that you're angry about. Like, one thing has nothing to do with the other. So now what you've done is you've committed a crime because you have now just destroyed somebody else's property. So, you know, those fires up on Fordham Road and some of those things I mean, it was just like, why is that happening? Why is that happening now? So that got, and again,
inexcusable. All of it's inexcusable.
And I don't know where that came from, and I don't know who that was exactly. And I feel somewhat like that was orchestrated by, I don't know who. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying, you know, it was very weird. And it totally took away from whatever the peaceful part of what was. And to see things boarded up, I mean, and now, so we talked about the mom and pop shops and how much we love them, aside from the fact that they had to shut down and they couldn't make any income because of the COVID. And then on top of all that, to destroy the property, you know, I was on Facebook, and I'm going to just say this. And there was a few people, and somebody said, well, you know, because they were going to Macy's, and Macy's is an iconic store. Again, the lover of architecture, they have those wooden escalators in there and everything. And somebody said something like, well, but you know, I know they're going to Macy's, but Macy's has insurance. And I'm like, who is educating you exactly? Like, where are you getting?
Oh God, right.
So it got so out of hand. And it was, so that was very upsetting. Just as upsetting as what happened was just as upsetting as, why are people behaving this way? What is going on?
The reaction, right.
So we lived through that. They came pretty close to where I live, and just no excuse. I mean, just no excuse. So you got some very good pictures of you know, things being boarded up. And I think that that's important. First of all, it's important to say we're not taking that. We don't do that here. We don't do that. So whoever you are, that's not happening here. We don't behave that way. And but it was important, and it was nice to see, you know, people getting together as one and being like, look, we can't do this anymore. There's got to be a different way of addressing things that go awry. So I was interesting that you were
change.
I loved what you said, like you saw it and you ran out and you participated, and And I mean, I think that that's great. And because it's not, we're all in this together. That's like been my hashtag, my be kind, and we're all in this together. So you and I have survived 9/11. And so we went through all that, which was a whole, a different situation, but sadness is sadness, which was, again, something that you wrote in the book. Sadness is sadness and grief is grief. And, we don't have to go there. We don't have to do things on purpose. Things like natural disasters that may happen, and not to get into, climate or anything, but, just certainly things happen, or accidents that happen. That's one thing, but to do things deliberately, like it's really, that's upsetting, because now we're creating more than we already have on our plate. We already had so much on our plate. So I think, again, you really captured that. You captured that really well, because when I got to that part, I was like, I had to take a pause, and it was like, oh yeah, that was so, it
was so frightening. Those days of rioting was, I mean, we're not accustomed to see what, I remember being glued to CNN, and they're in Atlanta, and they're like, there's a standoff, and they're breaking the glass to CNN. And it's like, unheard of. We're not used to witnessing that. And I hate to say it, because I don't want to be negative, but then we get ready for the elections, and we board up preemptively, and thankfully nothing happened yet. And a lot of the boards have come down, but the fact that it became more normal, and that I would watch a news story after the murder in Philadelphia a month ago, and they're rioting right near where my children were in school. Like, we're getting alerts from the school saying, there's civil unrest, and my daughter sees it out her window, and it was peaceful. But the fact that it's not even, it's normal news now, and that's devastating. I mean, that's the fact that we boarded up for an election. What is that? I mean, this is nation. So
That
the good that came out of it, of COVID, is that hopefully we will change. Yeah. Because the reaction wasn't, it's just unfathomable. But But again, the election hopefully came and went without violence for the most part.
Right. I don't
want to get too political on it.
Yeah, no. I mean, listen, no judgment here. We all have opinions. And just, what political party I belong to? Be a good person. That's the party I belong to. Be a good human being.
Right. That one works. That works well.
Right? Don't you
all
think?
Are welcome.
And that's how I always felt here, and it's just been such a weird time. And, people are like, I can't wait till 2020 is over. And it's like, well, but, it doesn't mean as soon as the calendar changes, everything's going to, you have to change, you can't, it's just got to move, kind of move forward. I mean, the virus definitely, even in the best of times, is putting a damper. I hope, I don't know. I hope it just kind of goes away. I'm kind of hoping it's like a virus. It works like a virus, and ultimately it dies itself out. But I don't know. I'm no epidemiologist. I'm just a comedian. I'm just trying to make things happen. All I know is I used to do comedy in front of real people, and now I do on Zoom, and it's a delay, and I don't know if anybody thinks I'm funny, and maybe I should go back to accounting. And I don't know. I got all kinds of things going on in my head.
So, you're making me laugh, and I'm positive you will be back up on stage. I mean, people are filming. TV shows are filming. TV shows are filming all over our neighborhood now.
Well, that's funny you said that.
I've seen it nonstop.
I've done, I've actually done a few live shows, big, social distance, all that, no shaking hands, no, none of that afterwards and stuff.
No spitting.
No spitting. Oh, we have mic condoms now. We put either you bring your own mic, or you bring a mic condom.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Although, you know what? Okay. Some of this stuff needs to stay. Once the virus is over, because I'm a germaphobe.
Right.
The thing with the washing hands, it's like, okay, who's not washing their hands all the time? Why is this
in our filthy city? Yeah.
Like somebody just discovered plutonium. It's like, what? I've been washing my hands forever. My hands are always dry. So I just thought that was weird. So the same thing with the mic condom, I'm into it. So it's like BYOM, bring your own mic, which is, I think, what we're going to start to do. But I did do some live to live shows. And I do work on some, I'm an actress also. I use the term loosely, but I do work on some TV shows. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Maisel was one of them. And
love Mrs. Maisel.
I'm a waitress, the second and third season. If you look closely, you'll see me with pastrami.
I will look again. Happy to rewatch.
But they're doing, so it's back, except I don't know about Maisel yet. I haven't heard anything, but you have to be COVID tested. So,
right.
And they use a lot of background and stuff. So it's a whole different thing. I mean, I'm sure they're not using as much background, obviously, as they used to. Green screens are becoming a new thing.
Right.
I mean, I'm a little worried because as things change, and again, when we go back to normal, I'm just going to think positive and go, when we go back to, this is done. I just hope that people don't get replaced by, this is a cheaper way to do it. Let me ask you this question, and then we got to again plug this book that's just so good. Do you think with all this remote, because I've had this conversation with people, I think there'll wind up being some businesses where like, hey, Sue, you can stay home because what you do, payroll can be done in, you don't have to come in, but there's still a lot of jobs that you need interaction with people, or you need to be sitting next to your coworker to be productive.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think?
I think that there will be, like you said, like bring your own mic changes, and many industries will adapt and change. But I think human nature and the way we've always worked is communally. And I would hope that people will return to their offices, and office life is a tremendous part of New York City's, industry and finance and real estate. And I think it's just better for people to interact with people in the flesh. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I think for the most part, people will go back. I do think, some companies will scale down. I think maybe, all of the business trips that occurred, I assume that companies will cut costs and realize they don't need to fly somebody, to Vegas every time. Or I just think that I think we're going to trim the fat a little bit, but I would hope, and I foresee that our lives will return to, familiar ways. I hope so. Because that's, my house is lovely, but I've worn it out. Everything's ripped, everything's shredding. It's like, I need to get out of here.
So you don't have did you get to go away at all? Did you go to the Hamptons or upstate or anything?
So my husband's side of the family, if I didn't mention this on my first podcast, they'd kill me. There is a family cottage that's shared by a bunch of cousins up in Quebec. So that's the Mecca, and that is where we go for a couple of weeks every summer. And it's, it's the happy place. And as we all know, the Canadian border is not welcoming us to cross it. So we didn't get to go there, which was a real shame. And it's closed indefinitely. So we really missed doing that. We were able to get 5 days away together in Lake George in August instead. So we chose a different lake because, we needed to have a lake. And it was the best part about the trip, besides being together, was after we booked it, the anticipation of going on a vacation. Like that was the best part. But other than that, I have slept in my own bed every single night since, March 17th or whenever, since we got locked down. And I haven't had anybody over to my house much. And yeah, I wish I'd gone away more, but I don't even have the urge. I don't have the bug. I know I hear people talking about, should we go to Florida for the winter? Should we go to Florida for vacation? Should we get out of the cold? And I'm just sedentary. I'm ready to just stay here and wait it out. But when we do go on vacation again, believe me, I will be very, very excited.
Yeah, we did a few weeks.
Have you been away?
Yeah, we did a few weeks in Hilton Head. I mean, I was like you, I was here the whole time, no Hamptons. I got to watch, I worked out online.
No.
I got to see everybody's beautiful backyard and porch and pool and, it was all this. I was sweating it out here. At some point in, like Memorial Day weekend, I think we wound up going to my sister's in Jersey. I hadn't seen my family. My one sister lives near me. So although we didn't see them for I mean, it was a good month, you know.
Right, because you didn't see people for months.
Right. So we went, actually, the first time we saw them, because they live on a low floor, so we talked from their terrace. That was Palm Sunday, because it was like,
I did that. I did that a little too. Yeah.
I was like, it's Palm Sunday. We got to be together. It's, you know, we don't do this. So, and then I think we went hiking in May, and then, you know, we got comfortable being with each other and stuff like that, and stuff. So, I mean, I've been around some relatives, and been to some restaurants, and look, I just, you know, I'm like respectful. I'm not one of these like, oh, get away from me. Oh, do you have this? Oh, do you have that? And I have sympathy with people. Obviously, if you have a condition, a
compromised, right?
You know, that's why you have to be empathetic. That's why the people that go into a store without a mask, it's like, listen, Karen, Anne Marie, whatever your freaking name is, put the mask on. Stop already. Or, you know what? Or just order fresh direct. How about that? Like,
right, don't go. Yeah.
Okay. You don't want to go out. So where I do, of course I do. And you know, and that's it. But I agree with you. But it's funny too, because people were like, we're cooking, we're this. I mean, my husband and I literally after 5 days ran out of things to talk about. Like we were done. Like we were done with each other. We were just like, want to look through your high school yearbook? I don't know. And tell me who you had a crush on.
Again.
Right. And who rejected me? That was me who got rejected. But so, oh my God, that was painful. But anyway, I don't know. We're fine. I think we are. The one thing I did say, I said, you know, we do need another place. Like we need something else. As much as I'm a city girl, and I really am, at that moment I needed some green. And we had Central Park, but like I needed a little bit.
Yeah.
That definitely.
Yeah, but you need out of it. Yeah, you need to escape.
A little bit of a bug. But your book, The Long Pause and Short Breath, which by the way, I'm sorry, I'd be remiss to not mention that our mutual friend, Kelly Ripa, who we love and adore, and we can agree is the nicest person
love
on the planet, endorsed it right there on the cover. And she's just, you know, she's so lovely. And they did their show every day and brought it every day.
That was fascinating.
And that, I don't know, I mean, not easy. And you know what? Because of course they had technical difficulty like everybody else does. But they're such
right. They're working off of a house computer. Yeah.
Right. And then there's such pros, and they just knew how to put the joke in where you needed to and get through it. So God
they made it work.
They made it work.
And we needed entertainment too. I was very grateful for that. Yeah.
And they were like the only
all the entertainers who worked from home.
Right. They were the first.
They started early on.
Right.
Early on.
The next week. I think Kelly was like on the
it wasn't
or something.
Yeah, it wasn't. They weren't off the air for long. Yeah, definitely. No, she did a bang up job.
And she loves New York, excellent. And she always she does such a great job on the show of talking about it, and which that show, I love that show for so many reasons, and that's one of them. It's sort of like Sex in the City, like New York was another character. You know, it's the same thing with that show.
Yes.
You know, Regis did it, and you know they talk about New York and what they do.
New York it makes for a good character. You know, New York is its own personality, and for me, it's like a family member. You know, I feel even more love for my city having survived these last few months, and I loved it before, so it just keeps giving.
Right. So again, The Long Pause and the Short Breath, you can find it on Amazon. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's a beautiful book. You're so talented. I'm so glad we met.
Thank you.
And we should really do a walk in Central Park. So we'll talk about that afterwards.
I'm free.
I'm available.
Okay.
So thank you. So give us all your website, your social media, and everything.
My social security number is as follows. So the book is The Long Pause and the Short Breath. It's available on Amazon and booksellers everywhere online. There's an ebook, a hardcover, and a softcover. My Instagram account, not for the book, but if you were interested in seeing photos of New York, extensive photos of New York, it's NFR Consult, FRCONSULT. That's my username. And my interior design, if you want to browse, that is nfrconsulting.com.
Yes, I went on your website.
That's just some good apartment porn, basically.
Oh, that's exactly what, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it was. I was loving it.
I never said that before. Yeah.
I was loving, oh yes. That was,
house porn, yeah.
I loved it. I loved it. Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing this, taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Ellen.
It was so fun. And yeah.
Great. This was
it's your first podcast, right? It didn't hurt.
I loved it. It was great.
I am Ellen Karis.
Talking to a friend.
I know. That's exactly how I love doing. Next time you'll come in the studio when we're back at the comic strip for your second book.
I'm coming to see you.
I'm Ellen Karis. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Greek Chick Comic, or my Facebook page, Ellen Karis, Greek Goddess of Comedy, or my website, ellenkaris.com. You can find all of my also prior podcasts on there as well. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, all that good stuff. And like we were talking about here, as you can see, we are two New York gals. Be kind. We're all in this together. We're all going to get through it. Just take a pause and it'll be good. It'll be good. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.